Is it truly possible to be both a parent and a teacher at the same time and then actually do them both well? What do you think?
I say yes and no. Can you do them both perfectly? No. If we have that standard for ourselves to be perfect in anything in life, that's not fair, right? We need to give ourselves grace because God is the only one that's going to be perfect. And so we strive to do our best.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
I would say we would be hard-pressed to find an educator who doesn't feel pulled between school and home duties. Whether you're a parent, an empty nester, a single teacher, you do have life beyond school. Well, or at least so they say. Yet school is a demanding place, and it's really hard to put that down and just walk away. So just as duties do conflict and pull us at times, roles can do the same. For some of you listening today, you might be a teacher and a parent, and that can really get tricky. We're going to talk about that today, and whether you are actually a teacher and a parent, or you know one, we have some really great topics for you today, and you are not going to want to miss out on this conversation. I'm so glad you're here. By the way, let me take this chance to remind you to take a minute to subscribe to the podcast and go follow us on social media. Once again, we're Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Teacher Edition Pod. We're also on YouTube, so if you're listening to these episodes, just know you can hop on over there and watch the episodes as well. One other quick item before we jump into today's interview, I just want to invite you again to go to our website. That's teachereditionpodcast.com. There you can subscribe to our emails so you'll get those updates when those new episodes are coming out. You don't want to miss that. Also on the website, you can go submit your questions. In the coming episodes, we want to take some time to answer those questions right here on the show. I'm really looking forward to seeing some more of those come in and then sharing them out with our listeners. So joining us today is Becky Teruel. She has a bachelor's and master's degrees in education. She's been in education for over 20 years. She's taught various grades, various subjects, and she also has experience as an early interventionist working with young children with deficits. She's currently serving here at BJU Press as a national consultant, and she is helping teachers in schools all around the country and actually around the world. Becky, thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. I'm excited to chat with you again. This is a great opportunity. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Okay, so part of Becky's bio that I didn't include is that she is also a parent and a teacher. So as we talk about this topic today, Becky brings her own experience to the table as well. So Becky, as we talk about this topic, I would venture to say that many of our listeners would say that being a parent and a teacher is very hard. We know it's done every day around the world in thousands of schools, but can it be done well? I mean, that really is tricky. So Becky, what are your thoughts? Is it truly possible to be both a parent and a teacher at the same time and then actually do them both well? What do you think?
I say yes and no. The no part is more just, can you do them both perfectly? No. But really, if we have that standard for ourselves to be perfect in anything in life, that's not fair, right? We need to give ourselves grace because God is the only one that's going to be perfect. And so we strive to do our best. So I think you can do both well. And it all comes down to balance. Balance is the word you'll probably hear too many times today, but everything in balance. And some days you'll feel like you excel, other days not so much, but just striving to get that balance. It's a daily thing. I found that myself. I'm sure you do in your life. It's just a balance of all of the responsibilities and asking God to help you every day.
Okay, so here at BJU Press and on this podcast, we talk a lot about biblical worldview. So let's again bring that in here. Becky, how do you see biblical worldview fitting into this topic? Where does that land?
That's great. And I like to start talking about from the biblical worldview, any subject or topic I talk about, because that is our heart here at BJU Press. And personally, it's my heart. So when I think about a biblical worldview for being the parent and the teacher and trying to get that all balanced, to think in the order of what I think God would want is, first of all, love God. And that sounds easy. Of course, I love God. I'm a Christian. I go to church, and so I'm good. But I know personally that finding time for your personal time with God, sometime during the day is tricky. I actually have a verse that I think about, Matthew 22:37, you shall love the Lord your God, and so on. To do that, just even seeking out a time, whether it's morning, evening, whenever it works for you, it can be a short time. It can be a few verses. It doesn't have to be a whole book of the Bible. During stages of your life as a parent, especially of young children, I remember thinking, I just have time for a few verses. That's it. But also communing with God and praying over your day, over your children. So loving God first is our ultimate goal. Then, of course, if you're married, loving your spouse next. And as simple again as that sounds, as a parent, I was always pulled. I would be pulled towards my kids because they needed me. They're young. But then I would be like, oh, I forgot I'm married. Like, oh, wait, I have a husband.
Minor detail, yeah.
Yeah. It was like, so it was a constant struggle for me, honestly, when the kids were young, because I felt that pull. And I have 4. So let's be real, there's a lot of chaos with 4 kids. Yeah. So to put your spouse above the children in your priority doesn't mean always with your time, because you know how that is. And so there's verses to go with that. Ephesians 5:25, Titus 2:4 for both the husband and the wife, if you're listening either way. And then love your children next. They are your responsibility. They have been given to you, whether it's biologically, by adoption, by fostering. They're the ones that you're responsible for now, and they should not feel in competition with your students in the fact that they know that mom or dad love me. I'm loved. I don't have to vie for that attention most of the time. And so to put their children first, again, there's verses with like Titus 2:4, love your children, and there's lots of verses. Those are just little clips I've thought about. And then after that, yes, work. You do have to teach, and you're hired to teach. You're hired to teach well. And so you do give your best, but not neglecting that other order where it's God, spouse, children, and then your work. Do all to the glory of God, right? We know that verse. But I'm going to say what I've experienced, I'm sure, Jenny, you have too, that more teachers struggle with the opposite. They work too hard. Right?
Yes.
So for me here, I don't want you to sit out there thinking, oh, shoot, I'm not working hard enough. Like you probably are working too hard. I'm putting it in there just because I think in the order of biblical worldview and what God wants from us, we do need to do our best, but that does not mean to the point of burning out either, right? So to keep that in line with all of the things. And then the last one is rest. Which again, you would agree with
Teachers
me, I know, because I know, Jenny, we don't
they live at school. There's shock in the store when you walk into Walmart and your students see you and they're like, what? She's not in the school building?
Yes.
What are you doing out?
Feel, though.
Yeah, I know. That's right.
We feel like we live there, and to take the time to rest really needs to be purposeful because it won't just happen. When you're in education, there's always something to do. At night, I would sit there thinking, oh, what could I do cool tomorrow? To just purposefully unplug and get just rest if you're physically, so that you're renewed for all those other things I talked about the next day. So that would be my view of the biblical worldview of this whole subject that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think that's right. Getting things in the right order. Like you said, I really like that you mentioned that your own children, your own family should not feel in competition with the school. And that is a really good way to put it, because you do, as a teacher, always feel like I need to be looking up something. I could do something better. I need to be grading something, contacting somebody, whatever. And just putting that down and letting them feel they are totally your world in that moment, being all there. We actually had another episode where we talked a little bit about balance. Of course, we talked about balance in a lot of them. And something he said was, when you're somewhere, be all there. If you go to their game, be there, not grading papers. Be there. And I thought that's really good. Where your feet are, be all there. And that's easy to say, hard to do. I get it. But I thought that's a really good principle. If we're having dinner, I'm not going to take a parent phone call right now. I'm going to be at dinner. And I love that word competition that you said, because that is really kind of how it would be easy to see that with your own children.
Yes.
Okay, so we have listeners who are parents and teachers, or parents and administrators, but we also have some who are considering or thinking about filling both those roles. So whether as new parents or as becoming a new teacher who's already a parent, what would you say to someone if they were to ask you, how can you do it all? Where would you start?
Right. So you can't do it all. You'll do your best back to that balance. I had a teacher parent email me from California, actually, and she said that, okay, I'm trying to go back into the classroom. I'm a parent, a spouse, and how do I do all this and do it well? And I said, well, don't expect perfection, first of all. And I knew a little bit about her, so I knew that probably was her tendency. And I said, you might not get to do all the cool things, because in their classroom, as you have time, you can do more cool things and fun things. And she was going to be a kindergarten teacher, so do your best, but don't forget your spouse. Back to that. Don't forget your children. And it's kindergarten, so teach the content, do some cool extra things if you have time. But, they'll still go to college if you don't do
Right.
that one extra cool fun game, right? Because
Correct.
that's my brain. Like, oh, but there was a cool one. But
Right,
the
right.
students don't
They'll
know
be
you were
scarred
going to
for
do
life if I don't do this.
Exactly. It's not going to keep them from college. And I'm not saying not to be an adequate teacher, to be a good teacher, but there's always fun things you can add, which some years you just don't have as much time for. So that's what I suggested to her, to try to keep, again, back to that balance. Yeah.
And you do just have one chance with your family,
That's
and
right.
God has given you to them and them to you, and you have one chance, and
That's
to
right.
not pass that by. I love how you pointed that out. They have to stay at the forefront, and
You
the
don't
others
want
will
regrets.
happen. Right.
Yes, and
Yes.
you don't want regrets, because that's been my whole life. I don't know why, but I've had that worry. I don't want to regret. Not that I don't have any, but that's exactly right. You have
Yeah.
the one chance, and you can't go back and think, wow, I wish I'd spent more time with my children. Well, they're gone now. Like, they're
Right.
old and gone,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So,
past.
yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack that just a little bit more, maybe with some more, let's talk specifics. So we were talking about specifics here on the podcast. We love adding practical things that people can just walk away right now with. So what are some specific tips or tricks maybe you have for those who are teacher parents or teacher administrators, maybe some strategies that they could use as they try to navigate both those roles? What have you found to be helpful?
Yeah, I actually made a list when I was thinking through, because I'm very practical. I am very more practical than cerebral, I think. And most people, I think, in the education world are.
Sure.
We just want tidbits, helps, because we don't have time to go deep, really. The overall arching thought here, if you can think about balance, but think about it in weeks, not days, because each day is not going to be, I spent time with every child, with my spouse, taught all the things. Every day won't be that way, because, as you know, we have parent-teacher conferences sometimes. Well, that day is completely taken up with work. But the next day, maybe you spend an extra time, a fun time, having a special dinner. So if you can balance it out over a week in your thought process, rather than, oh no, I failed
Yeah,
today,
good
because
thinking. I
that's
like
our
that.
tendency. Yeah, I feel like I was that way at first. Oh no, I didn't read 12 books to my child. I only read 10, and I should have, like, who puts those standards on us? It's us, right? So think about it in the week, balance the week, and then back to each day, plan through. So that's an overarching theme. If you think about it, as I give some specifics, I just like that whole thought. It helped me, spread out, because
It
otherwise
takes a little
each day
pressure
feels,
off.
it
It's
totally
not, you have to
does.
perform 100% every single day. No, I
And you
like that.
can't. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's too much stress. So I have a few. I wrote down actually a few, thinking this
Okay.
through. The first one is very simple. I would think simple, but not everyone does this, because I've been around enough to use some type of planner. It does not have to be written down. It can be electronic, online, whatever one works for you. That's what I always tell people, whatever one works for you. If I say you need to have the exact planner I do, they're like, ew, that's not my personality. And I think they'll go, okay, fine. But whatever works. And I have things online, electronically. I also digitally, whatever you want to say, but I also have a written one, because often when I'm flying, I'm just thinking, oh, I got to write a few notes to myself. So I keep the paper as well. I have both. We've always had a family calendar, and I still have it, even though my kids have all moved out. I'm still write down a few key things for my husband and I to check. Right? It kind of
Right.
helps. And
Yeah.
maybe it's more for him than me, but okay, whatever. So it's just
We
like,
won't go there.
no, we won't go there. Okay. But I do still, so get a planner and use it. If you're not used to doing that, and you're like, I can remember everything. I used to think that, and maybe it's just because I got older, but I have to write it down. And honestly, let me tell you a tidbit here, where just planning the whole week instead of each day, right? So over the week, you think I need to spend one-on-one time, let's say with my kids. Okay, Tuesday I could spend time with Sally. Thursday I could spend time with Johnny. Wednesday I could, right? And so, okay, over the week I will have spent one-on-one time with everybody, just not all in one day. So a planner helps, I think, alleviate that from your head. Like, oh goodness, oh yeah, no, but look at the week, right? And my husband's really good about that. Even when the kids were home, he would put down, I'm going to have coffee with so and so this day of our children, and I'm going to, go do this with this person, so that he felt, because he's very busy also. And so over the whole week, he felt like, okay, I'm going to hit everybody, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Rather
when it's
than all
scheduled
on
in.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it
can't.
kind of it protects that time too. If you have it on the schedule, if you just think in my
Exactly.
mind I have to do it, not only is it stressful in your mind, but it just won't
Yes.
happen. Something will fill that spot.
It will, and keep it as an appointment. I have told
Yeah.
people, "Oh, sorry, I have an appointment." It is an appointment with my child,
Yeah.
right? And I honestly, that I think that's not lying. I think that's very purposeful,
Sure.
because somebody will always take your time,
Oh,
and you know that
100%.
as much as any of us do. Okay, so that one. So say no to opportunities, even good ones, and that is tricky, right? I'm going to say that it took me a long time to learn this, but I think I might be going the opposite way. So I have to pull back because I got so overwhelmed. So now my first thought is to say no. And then I think, well, wait, I could actually do that. But I'm unusual. But that's because of what I've been through. So when people say, can you do this? I mean, could you help with this committee? Could you help set up for this? I really think a great answer is, let me check my schedule and I'll
Yeah.
get back with you.
Right. That
I taught
pause.
my youngest that. Yes, the pause. I taught my youngest that because she's pulled everywhere and everyone wants to do something from her, get something from her. And so she was overwhelmed. And I said, just always tell them I'm going to check my schedule, which means not right then. Right.
Right.
So you're going back wherever you are. It could be on your phone, but and you think it through, because we're pulled. We want to, especially if we're people pleasers, we're going to say, yes, of course.
Yes. I was going to
And
say
then at
some
the end of the day,
personalities. Ooh, yeah.
yes,
Yes just flies right
yes.
out.
Right. And obviously my personality must have changed, because over the years I tend to say no almost immediately. And I make myself now on the opposite end say, I'll check on that. And then I can often say, oh yes, actually that would work. So either way, but most teachers and educators have a harder time saying no, right? Especially when it's from their administrator. I need you to do this, or could you do that? Well, you want to make, you do want to please them, but sometimes it's not best in that situation. Or you had a huge family thing you were planning to do that day, and your kids will be so disappointed, all the things. So there's that. And so this one is very simple. Okay. And you're going to think, well, but I have been around enough to know this is actually necessary to say, plan your meals. And you're like, okay, that's everyone knows that. No, they don't actually know that. I have actually had people say to me, because they know I'm such a planner, that is my brain. I was born a planner. So don't be impressed. It's just the way I'm made. But they'll say, okay, Becky, I have all these things to do. Can you help me know how to get all of that done in the next couple of days? And I'm like planning their life for them because I do that easily. Like, it's just my brain. And some of them, part of it is their meals. They're like, every day I drive home from teaching and I think, what am I going to have for dinner? And I have to stop and, even to buy the ingredients. And I'm not trying to say Monday is turkey with, all the things. I don't mean that, but just a general, I have ingredients for 4 or 5 meals for the week.
Right.
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 I'm not trying to be specific, like on Thursday, it'll be spaghetti. What if you don't feel like spaghetti on Thursday? You still have to have it because it's I
That's
don't
right.
mean
It's
that.
in the planner. It's in the
It's in the
planner. Go back to
planner.
number 1.
Exactly. No, it's not that way. I think you have to really, whatever, again, with your personality, but have a few meals in your head that you can whip up. Life happens. Sometimes we had to pick up food. It's not that it's wrong, but if you had to stop every day, which honestly, I know people that do, so don't think that it doesn't happen. If you have to stop every day, that takes time, back to not having enough time. And then that adds in, I have to go to the grocery store, and you get all stressed on the way home. We have nothing to eat. Right. And so, just to have a few meals, I think that's just very a wise use of your time, whether you're an educator or not. Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. That's super practical. And it
Yeah,
saves time too. Even those stops, it's never quick to go to the store.
it is
So now you're
not.
already leaving late. Now you have to stop. Yes, it just
Yes.
builds up that angst. I love that. Super practical.
And if your children are with you, you have to get them out of the vehicle
Oh,
and take them
yes.
all in. That's
Oh,
painful. I mean, I'm telling you, I loved when I could leave them in the van, right? So, I mean, just all the things. It just adds a layer, right? And
right.
so anyway. Next one is spend less time on social media. It doesn't mean I never would say don't spend time on social media. I'm not one of those people, like, who am I to tell you what to do? But I would say maybe consider different time, or right after school is when your children are most likely to share, or whenever their time is. And I have found that it was right after school, might be different for your family. Whenever that is, don't have like, oh, really? Oh, okay. Watching them, because they know they're not important to
Yeah,
you.
back to competition.
It's a competition. So maybe go, I think it's not wrong actually for a parent to go home and, recharge, go wherever it is, your office, your bedroom, something, and say, children, I need 20 minutes alone. That is not wrong. That is not selfish. Everyone needs that. And maybe during that time, part of it is, I'm just going to scroll for a few minutes because it's mindless. I need a break. That's not wrong. Don't make it a competition, like you said, between your children and social media, because it's not, in the end, it's not a good thing. So I'm just saying spend less time, not telling you don't, right? That's a
No,
whole
I think
thing.
that's
So
great. And that's one of those things that, like, you think, I'm just going to look for a minute and see what happened today. And an hour later, it's gone. It's just amazing the time. And I've had teachers tell me that, like, I can't get everything done. I'm sorry this isn't prepared, but I didn't have time. But they're definitely all up on what's happening in everybody's lives.
yes.
I had one, I mean, it's just whatever your thing is, just watching the time. If you're I don't know, you like to take walks and you think I'm gonna take a quick walk and 2 hours later you wander back. It's
Right.
just, like you said,
That's
just
right.
watching your time. And you are so right. Social media
Oh,
can eat that so
oh,
fast.
so fast. And then your kids notice, right?
I
And it's just all
know.
about being a parent and an educator. So really that's why I mentioned that.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So what about this one? Have your older children take more responsibility. Again, that might seem like, oh, of course, that's what's going to happen. I don't know if you've noticed this, Jenny, but I have talked to enough teachers, educators, that say, well, I just do it all myself. It's faster and easier.
Oh,
I know I
100%.
could name people, which I won't, but they just, and I thought, and I would say to them, but wouldn't your children need to learn responsibility? Shouldn't they help you? You're working hard as a teacher. When I was a teacher and I was working hard, I had my children always, this is your job this week. This is your job this week. And I know they were, excuse me, busy, but so was I. And so we're all busy. So especially in high school, right? Well, I have games. Yes, well, I'm doing all the things. So please help me. And they did. I'm not saying they complain, but there's a lot going on between them and, their life. But if you do everything for them and then they get out in the real world, like, oh, wait, people actually have to do this for themselves. Like,
Yeah, it's a lost
yes,
art.
actually.
Learning to work
Right.
at home. Like, I remember vacuuming as long as I can remember, but I know when I was principal, I had a few students who were struggling in their behavior. And so we decided some other methods weren't working. So they were going to help me sweep one day. We were going to sweep the cafeteria. And I remember handing them a broom and they're like, how do you do it? I don't even know how to do it. And I was like, oh, wow, you are this old. I said, do you not sweep at home? No, my mom says it's quicker. She just does it and she does a better job. And I was like, oh, it's just a good principle, whether you're a teacher or not, just teaching those kids responsibility
Oh,
and how to help. But
sure.
for sure, in this case, as a
Oh
teacher,
my. Yes,
divvy up
just to
some of
help.
that and be a team as a family.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's
Yeah.
great.
So I think that's just really, just because so many don't, like you said,
Oh, yeah.
it's interesting you said that, because I heard that a lot from my fellow friends. And then I thought, oh, like they need to though, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's important. This one is going to be probably stepping on everyone's toes, including my own. Get adequate sleep. And that again, this comes back to rest. We don't, right? That is something that, and then I don't know, we just don't tend to think that's important. And I've read a lot about it. I know everyone has about rest and all the things, but if you don't get enough rest, there's a whole list of health situations that can happen from not getting a typical 7 hours. Like everyone needs less or more, whatever, but a typical rest time is 7 hours for an adult. And some will say, well, I only get 3 or 4 a night. I taught with people, and I thought, but like, how do you function? And eventually you can function. Some people do, but I guess apparently it eventually catches up with you, and then your health starts to, come down and not do as well because of that. So that, if back to priorities, when you had that whole biblical worldview list, rest was one of those, and really adequate sleep is something I think teachers really struggle with. I did. I think most do. And I love when I'll ask teachers in a room, how many of you feel like you get adequate sleep? I do have a few, and I'm so proud of them. I
They
just
need
want
a
to give them a
prize.
hug. Like, wow. Oh,
Yeah. How do you
'cause
do
it's,
it?
yes. So I'm like, they're like, some of them will say, I need 8 hours. That's just how it is. And I'm like, that is great though. I
Yeah.
really am impressed. I'm not, I laugh about it, but also I really am that you
They know
think,
themselves. Yeah.
yes, it's a priority, and here you go. So I think that's a really good one. Grade every spare minute. I mean, as much as that also is like, well, of course, but not everyone does. A lot of teachers, I think, tend to do piles on their desk and, just take the whole big pile home and go home with this big stack. And then they're overwhelmed back to they have children, and their children are needing to bother mom or dad. You're like, well, you need to keep track of the time. So but my brain again is very efficient. So maybe not, this won't work for everybody, but I am always thinking I have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Like I could grade a whole set of spelling tests in 10 minutes because you
Right.
become a
Or you
very
could
fast
stand in the
grader.
teacher's lounge and talk.
Yeah, yes. And it's not wrong to fellowship. I really
Correct.
tried to,
Correct. You're
with
right.
my team, pull them together and
Sure.
let's take a few minutes to fellowship. But they're maybe at bathroom break and they're out in the hall and they're just starting, I can pull a few. I was just constantly thinking of when could I grade just to take a few less minutes later. So when I took it home though, of course you have to. I would maybe sit on the couch in our great room purposefully so that my children could come around and bother me, and it wasn't a bother. I wanted them to feel very free. So even though I'm working on school stuff, I'm planning, I'm grading, they could still interact with me. I never did that whole I'm home now, children, stay away for the next 3 hours. Back to then they're going to regret, they're going to not regret it, resent it, I guess.
Yeah. You might as well stay at
And
school. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. So that grading part is, I mean, very practical, and maybe most people do well with it, but I know not everyone has good time management. And so that is something I just learned to be very efficient with grading. And then when I finished grading, I entered the grades. There was no once a week, putting the grades
Oh,
in.
yes. Yeah.
Oh, and I know some people do though, right?
Yep. Yep. That's true. Yeah. Typing in the keypad smoking while they enter
Oh
everything
man,
for the whole week.
yeah, that's tricky. Another one, exercise kind of goes along with sleep, but exercise consistently. That doesn't mean every day, but there's so many studies out there. So I'm not trying to be all medical, but there's so many studies that say even 20 minutes, a few days a week, that is enough. Whether it's walking, it doesn't have to be running. I don't run. Honestly, I don't run. I don't love running. It's not my thing. I walk most days. I do a few other things. Do I love it? No, I'm not. I'm not one of those people that love doing it. I just do it for my health. And so again, another priority and it's like, how do I fit that all in? You just have to figure out the balance. Again, like if it's a day where you have parent teacher conferences in the evening, you barely have time to breathe. Obviously that's not the day you're going to say, I'm going to go for a walk. You might not have time, but the next day maybe, right? That's again, looking at your whole week rather than every day, because every day has its own
Sure.
challenges.
Sure. And I
So,
think I was thinking while you're pointing out, getting sleep and, planning your meals, exercising, those all make you feel better, which make your interactions better with your own family too.
yes,
If you feel like you've laid it out all day at school,
yes,
with this front up and being great and wonderful. And then when you get home, that's often when we're like in crash mode. And if you
yes.
don't feel good, you're tired, you're not exercising. So you just feel yucky. That's that also, I guess, affects our interactions with our family. And since we're talking about being
Exactly.
both,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
where
I
you're giving
agree.
it all to school and your family's taking the brunt
Exactly.
of
And
the
to
lack.
really not do that with them. I mean, we're never going to be perfect, but I worked really hard not to be the cranky one at home. Because what's interesting about that, Jenny, is when you're out and about and you're all smiley, like you said, because it's like a whole, like, of course, ooh, it's like you're acting kind of all day in a way.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You're on all day.
You're on all day. But when you're out and about like that, and then you come home and you're a different person, I was very worried about that for my children. So I was pretty real out and about too. I remember people meeting me and saying, "Hey, how's it going?" And I just been very woof with my children. And I would say, actually having a bit of a rough morning because my children are listening to me. And if I'm standing there saying, "Great," and the kids are like it's not though, right? I mean, so they would be
right.
So I was, and then it throws people off if they didn't know me well, because I'm like, oh, she's being honest. And I'm not saying I told them what happened, right? I'm just saying, rough morning. Oh, so now the kids are like, okay, she's being real. And I was kind of real a little picky about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. When you mentioned exercise, it made me think back. We actually did an episode way back where we talked about your health as a teacher. And one thing that the doctor on that episode recommended is even at recess, walk. Like often we just stand still, and just watch them play. Walk. At least you could get some time. And if you have to go to the teacher's lounge, take the long route. So at least you get a little bit of movement, from the baby steps all day.
Yes, I watched that. Yeah, or listened to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to fit it in. You're so right. It's like, one more thing.
It's true. Yes. Good. Yes. Another one, and this is probably the last of the list of the ones I came up with, but communicate well with your family. We tend to do that. I have a whole session I'll talk to teachers about communication and just having that parent-teacher communication, doing it that well. But what about our family? We were very much to include our children in our plan for the week, because it always comes back to that whole overarching, what's your week like? And so, okay, mom's going to be really busy Monday night. She has parent-teacher conferences, or dad has a parent meeting that he has to, it's going to take a while, or meeting with the board or whatever your position is. Just so children, for the week, Mondays, it's going to be a little, rough. We're not going to see each other much, or Friday, whatever, but we're going to make up for it on Saturday, or we're going to so they know what's coming.
Yeah. It's an expectation.
Yeah. Right. So then they know, oh, good. I can't wait till Thursday. Something to look forward to. I was fascinated when I was a teacher for years that how many children didn't know even what their parents did in life, like what their occupation was.
Right.
And yes. I mean, did you find that fascinating when you were back with the kiddos? It's just interesting. Like, don't you talk? I mean, because dinner time, if we're in the same house, we all sat down for dinner. It didn't always happen because we weren't all there, but we talked, right? Communication, letting them know. I just think that just like knowing what daddy does for a job or what mommy does.
Right.
Which seems
be a
simple,
part.
but so I think that communication is just a key, filling them in, keeping them posted, and then keeping them updated if something changes, so that, again, it takes away their frustration. Like, oh man, I was hoping to see dad this week. Well, you will though, right? On Thursday or whatever you do. So
I think it gives them stability too, when they know what to expect. It's not every day. Like, now what's happening today? What's happening today? Exactly. So I love back to that week thing of just giving them that overview. Okay. So in hearing what you said, have a planner, say no to some opportunities, even good ones, plan your meals, watch your time on social media, limit it as necessary, give your older children some more responsibility, get adequate sleep, grade every spare minute that you can. That will pay off in the long run. Exercising, and then communicating well with your family. Those are excellent. These are so practical. This is right where we live. So often we put up our brave faces, and like we talked about, we act like we have all of our ducks in a row, but in reality, we're paddling like crazy under the surface trying to make everything happen. And we feel like the balls that we're supposed to be juggling so well are going everywhere but where they're supposed to be. It's not just the tasks. We can feel so emotionally pulled too. You want to be there and pour into your family, but education is not paper pushing. It's not widget counting. It's not that type of job. You don't just turn off at 5 o'clock. It's investing and impacting lives. And if we're all in, it impacts our lives too. We take that home. We care about those students and those families. So Becky, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing from your experiences. Just before we sign off, do you have any other final advice or other thoughts you can leave with our listeners?
Yeah, so some of the last thoughts I would love to say is remember to laugh. Take time to laugh. I don't know if you're like me, but the more stressed I get, the more busy I get, the less I laugh. right? Everything just seems so, you get intense and, that look on your face, whatever. And just, I love to laugh. I mean, I just think life can be hilarious. I mean, you might as well laugh as cry, they say, right? So if you find yourself not laughing enough, make sure you just think, I need to relax more. I need to just take some time with my family and laugh, or whatever would help you. Let your mind wander. Those are thoughts just to like sometimes we go for times where we're so just all the time, even on the way home, I'm making work calls. But guess when our creativity happens? When we're just like, right. And your just mind is kind of free. And that's actually good. That's why we say kids need time just to be bored, because it helps with their imagination. And just be careful when you're at school what you say, because this is a funny thought, I guess, in a way, but what you do say at school will go home.
Oh, yes.
So if you're stressed and
Straight to the
kind of
dinner
take it
table.
out, yes, the parents will find out, and you're
That's
like, I
right.
just had a rotten day, yada, yada, yada. Well, the students aren't probably the ones you should say that to,
No.
because their parents will then say, oh, whatever. So those are just some little thoughts that overarching, this whole communication and having that balance and having the plan and all, just final thoughts. But really remember to laugh. If there's nothing else you take away, take time to laugh and relax, because this stuff will always be there. There's always something to do.
Yeah. Don't lose the enjoyment of it all. There is joy in both.
Exactly.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate it once again.
Yes, you're welcome.
And listeners, thank you for joining us as well today. Whether you are a teacher parent or a colleague that's supporting one, I hope you found encouragement and were challenged in what you heard today. Remember to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to learn more about this show and to submit questions for our upcoming episodes. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and go follow us on social media. Now it's time to get back to your day, but it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and also through His grace working in you. Go do what God has called you to do.